Yeah, I often, when I worked at the garden center, I didn't want to, there was it was so gross out there and dirty, and I didn't want to get my hands all filthy and disgusting, so I was always wearing gloves.
Mm-hmm.
And just going through so many gloves, and then they like like every day or two I'm getting a new pair of gloves because of how nasty they would get, and eventually they locked the cabinet that the gloves were in, I think solely because of how many I was taking, like, because clearly it hadn't happened up until the time I started working there.
Our profitability is down 20% this quarter.
Yeah.
What's going on?
It was just me.
Peter using the gloves.
Yep. Single-handedly, well, two hands.
Two-handedly.
Two-handedly brought down the company.
Welcome to I'd Buy That for $1, a podcast about inexpensive, common, and underappreciated records that are waiting to be rediscovered. I'm your host, Sean Hartman, producer of the failed compilation album Grandpa's Gonna Sue the Pants Off of Santa and 13 other sequel songs that no one asked for or remembers.
I know that's not true because there's no way that project would have failed. I would have bulk bought pallets of it.
Well, I'm shipping you pallets of them right now.
Yes. Well, I'm co-host Jeremy, and I have a controversial take for you fellas.
Well, right out the gate?
Right out of the gate, a little controversy.
I like it.
You ready for the sizzling hot take?
Yeah.
I personally feel that even a plant, even an unremarkable poinsettia, let's say.
An unremarkable poinsettia. Wow.
Even a plant like that, who has no uncle or aunt, should...
Wait, what, is this a Norm Macdonald joke? I'm sorry to interrupt your flow.
It's all right. Even a plant with no uncle or aunt should spend Christmas Day by itself.
This is a take. This is a hot take of yours.
It's related to the episode, Peter.
Okay. All right. I must have gone down a different rabbit hole.
I was going to say, I really hope Peter is pulling from the same obscure connection that Jeremy and I obviously are.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think so, because I don't know what y'all are talking about.
Good. Well, at least one of us will be surprised when I bring it up at the end of the episode.
I hope we at least address it. Every so often, with these intros, we go to some obscure route and then never acknowledge or explain it in the episode.
That's for the true heads.
It's true. I mean, even the Neil Young episode, I don't think we ever actually acknowledged that his nickname is Shaky, and Sean was wobbly for that.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
But anyway, I am co-host Peter Cook, author of the new book, It's a Man's Field. Noteworthy figures in the arts named Mansfield, including Hollywood actress Jane Mansfield, New Zealand modernist writer Catherine Mansfield, and of course, American multi-instrumentalist Ernie Mansfield.
Of course.
So that's coming out soon.
Now, you've promised at least a dozen Jane Mansfield references throughout this episode, right?
Oh, 11 more now.
11 more. We'll see where I can work those in. And why would the name Mansfield be significant, Sean?
Well, I suppose it might have something to do with the album that I selected to talk about today, Ernie Mansfield and his 1983 album Windsailor. Windsailor on Catero Records.
All of that sounds very new age.
It's a little bit new age, but it's also jazz, prog, kind of funky. It's This is one of those albums that sort of defies easy categorization.
That's true. But it's a pretty good easy listen. Not easy listening, but it's a pleasant but engaging listen.
I'd have to agree, and I think maybe we should go ahead and play a first song and see if the rest of the audience is on board with that assessment.
I'm going to try and categorize it within 10 seconds of hearing it.
Okay, this is your first listen?
No.
We all previewed.
Good. Prepared. Ready to discuss.
You told us to make sure we didn't slack.
Yeah. As opposed to all those other episodes.
Sean he runs the show at the end of the day.
That's true.
He is the host, and we're just we are the quaint, measly co-host, Jeremy.
Quaint and measly are definitely the two words I usually think of first when describing the two of you.
One's quaint, one's measly.
Yeah, who's who?
I'll have to think about that. But first, let's listen to side A, track 1, Letter from Jennifer, off Windsailor.
Ernie Mansfield.
Brother of?
Jane Mansfield. There's two. It feels like it's been a while since we featured a flutist or flautist on the podcast.
Yeah, in my mind, it feels like an instrument that's like very well represented, but I guess that's mostly just because I try and bring up Herbie Man whenever I can.
I was thinking that. I mean, I was looking back just now as we were listening, and we, of course, featured Herbie Man early on in the podcast. But as far as the main artist being a flutist, I think we had Kay Gardner and Tim Weisberg, the Dan Vogelberg and Tim Weisberg album. That was in the last year or two. But beyond that, I'm not sure that we've had too many flutists we've really focused in on.
You're forgetting about the Oops All Flute album that we covered, Paul Horn.
That was like, wasn't Paul Horn a flute? Yeah.
Yes, you're right. You are correct. That's true.
And he's on both main feed and the Patreon Christmas special we just did.
Yeah. So we've had a few times that we've gone this direction, but
yeah, I think culturally our ratio of flute coverage is higher than flutes actually appear in our culture. So I think we're doing okay. But it is time for another flautist.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed this album, spending just the last day or two with it. I find the music you mentioned, this is 1983, right, Sean?
Yeah, recorded 82, released 83.
The music doesn't really feel there's like a hints of jazz from the the kind of the time frame leading up to the early 1980s, but it doesn't really go too hard in the fusion direction, or at least sometimes the things that turn me off about fusion, I should say. It's the playing's not flashy for the sake of flash. It does feel like it's serving a purpose to move the composition forward, everything that's happening, all the different players.
Yeah, and it definitely, the sound of the whole thing kind of has more of a private press feel, in that like it's pretty obviously not going for just straight commercial appeal, and you can tell that there's no studio producer breathing down the necks of the players on this one trying to get it to fit into the right boxes. It goes in a lot of places, both style wise, energy wise. Yeah,
and it's not too far in the smooth jazz direction either.
Right. I mean, I guess if you had to give it one genre, you could say new age, but there's also plenty of material on here that definitely is not very new age.
Yeah, even that song, the drums, when those kicked in, that's not new age.
Right.
That was like more energetic and kind of shifty than new age typically gets.
Yeah. When I first pulled this record out of the bins just a couple months ago, my first thought was like, well, this is either new age or prog rock. And then I sampled a bit of it and I was like, I guess it's maybe a little bit of both, and also jazz and a few other things. But I don't know if you guys looked at the artwork much. It's pretty mystical. Definitely, reminds you of some of those like Yes album covers and things like that. There's like a spacey looking castle in the mountains. It's got like a little bit of Lord of the Rings vibe to it.
All the touch points of progginess.
Yeah, exactly.
So you picked this up just recently, Sean. Were you at all familiar with his name when you did, or was it just a complete, like you just searching through and saw something interesting and gave it a chance?
Just digging through the old-fashioned bargain bins. I was at the record store inside of the Quakertown Flea Market, one of my favorite digging spots north of Philly. They have a cool back room area where all the LPs are, I believe, $2 a piece. So yeah, the artwork jumped out at me right away as being something interesting, and everything about it was off my radar. I didn't recognize the names of players on it. And I had brought a portable turntable with me, so I just listened to a little bit of it and was like, yep, this is interesting. Definitely keeping this one. So yeah, for this episode, I wanted to pick an album that's definitely more on the obscure side. Something that is very cheap and overlooked, maybe not necessarily common. You're not going to find this everywhere. But one thing I really believe about this album is it both has the look and the sound of something that probably should be a lot more expensive than it is.
Today, as I was listening and taking my dog for a walk, I decided upon arriving home that I was ordering myself a copy, and I was able to get a near mint copy on Discogs. The seller said that they had found it sealed and opened it and played it once. They were selling it for $6.
Perfect.
So, yeah, I think there were only 11 copies for sale, but yeah, none of them were expensive.
Yeah, it's cheap on Discogs right now, but there's not a lot of copies. So if people are hearing this and like it, you should probably grab one before it becomes maybe impossible to find. We like to joke about the I'd buy that bump, but if it could really affect any album, it might be this one. So jump on it.
Yeah. If the number available is 11, we might actually have that that kind of push.
It's taken us 7 years of doing this, but we're influencers.
True.
Well, so Ernie Mansfield, what did you learn about him, Sean?
I actually learned a fair amount because I started doing a little digging. I was like, there's some information about this guy. And I found pretty quickly he's got his own website up there. Wasn't too old, had contact information on it. And I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and email Ernie, see if he gets back to me, see if he might be able to shed a little more light on his story. And he got right back to me. He was very generous with his time and answers. So a lot of the information I pulled is direct from the source. So big thank you to Ernie Mansfield himself.
Very cool.
For informing us on this episode. And we'll get into the full story, but why don't we listen to another song first?
Let's do it.
All right, this one probably my favorite on the album, and definitely one that feels like, man, how come this song has not been sampled? This feels like ripe for someone to pull from. This is side A, track 2, Paris Has Me.
I actually did listen to not only this, but more of Ernie's catalog. And he put out an album in 2020 that included a version of this song with vocals on it.
Yeah, with a woman singing it.
Yeah.
I heard that too. On my drive to your house to record this episode.
Yep.
I heard that, and yeah. I didn't realize it was that recent.
Yeah, it's a catchy little number and sounds nice with words to it. I wouldn't have, upon hearing this at first, I couldn't hear words being sung over the top of it, but now that I have, it seems obvious.
Something about the melody or phrasing or structure of that one, there's something in it that oddly enough reminds me of the more serious jazz and even classical work of Frank Zappa.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, given when Ernie was coming up as a musician, he was likely aware of Frank Zappa. So it seems possible that was an influence.
Yeah, like the Hot Rats, Grand Wazoo era Frank Zappa stuff.
Yep, some of that and maybe even some of the 80s stuff.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. I can definitely see that. Also, the back of the jacket credits lyrics to Paris Has Me by John Quick. So there was lyrics initially, even though it's an instrumental on this recording. But yeah, I think it works great both with vocals and without.
Oh, interesting. I wonder if they had planned on releasing this version with vocals and then pulled them for some reason and then still had to credit the guy who, or it was just the jacket was already printed, and that can happen too. I'm guessing you didn't get into that nitty gritty with Ernie.
No, I did not get an answer to that question, unfortunately. So some things will still be a mystery, I suppose.
Well, if Ernie listens, you can always reach out to us at idbuythatpodcast@gmail.com.
Send us the lost original Paris Is Me with vocals, please.
All right. Well, you guys want the full Ernie Mansfield story as I have arranged it?
Let's hear it. Primary source and all.
All right. Well, Ernie grew up in Chicago. He was born around 1950. He declined to give out his exact birth date, which is okay. His mother was a classical pianist, but did not play professionally. His parents were both into folk music, especially artists like Pete Seeger and the Weavers. As a young teenager, Ernie was an usher at the orchestra hall in Chicago and got to see a great deal of classical music while on the job, including seeing Igor Stravinsky in person at one point.
Wow.
So yeah, we have some strong early musical foundations there for sure.
Yeah, that's a pretty radical figure.
Yeah.
To have witnessed.
Absolutely. His last 2 years of high school were at Interlochen Arts Academy. I'm sure you guys are both familiar with that place.
Yeah, it's a Michigan place, right? Not too far from Peter and I, but it's like, I think it's like internationally renowned. It's like one of the top music places for, before college level.
So after high school, he attended college at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. Began playing folk music with local musician and film editor David Luck, at first in a trio called the Ensemble. And before you ask, Peter, yes, they played many gigs at the Red Herring.
Wow, previously discussed on the Dan Fogelberg and Tim Weisberg episode.
Yes, exactly. And a further tie-in to that episode, in early 1971, David Luck put together a band called Bucyrus Erie, initially with the idea to record some soundtrack music for something he was working on. The group released 145 that you can find on Discogs for quite a bit of money, with the tracks Sweet Lady James and Tiger, which feature fellow student Dan Fogelberg on vocals.
All ties together.
It all ties together. Ernie had said that seeing Dan perform at the Red Herring, it was obvious that Dan was like a head above all the other local musicians at the time. They all kind of looked up to him.
Yeah, that makes sense from what I remember learning about when we did that episode.
Yeah, so shortly after the Bucyrus Erie sessions, Dan, of course, went out west, got famous, and Ernie went a different, interesting route. He ended up moving to France for a couple of years and joining the experimental folk group Mormos, which is another group that has kind of very sought-after, rare albums online. A brief history of that band: Mormos was led by a Chicago musician named Jim Cuomo. Jim had been a student at the University of Illinois and played in a psych group called Spoils of War, a group that Ernie had definitely seen perform around. After graduation, Jim became the music director at La Mama Experimental Theater in New York City. The theater then did a European tour, and while in France, Jim, performing with an early version of Mormos, was offered a record contract, and Jim decided to quit the theater, accept the contract, and stay in France. But first, he went back for just a couple weeks to Champaign-Urbana to try and convince Annie Hatt, who was the vocalist from his band Spoils of War, to join him. And during those 2 weeks, he actually spent a bunch of time jamming with Ernie, which is why Ernie Mansfield decided to join the group and move to France with them. He lived out there for about 2 years.
I checked out the Mormos album Great Wall of China, about maybe a third or half of it, and it was very Peter-coded.
Yeah, that was definitely my thought digging into Mormos. I was like, well, I know which part of the story Peter can latch on to.
Did you check some of it out, Jeremy, as well?
I did. I listened to some of that and the next band that I'm guessing you're going to mention. And I was like, both these are very Peter-coded things.
Definitely, you could compare them to the Incredible String Band.
Yeah.
Among other more eccentric folk of that era. And I'll be listening to more Mos.
I see what you did
well
there.
Done.
That was on the spot. I swear I didn't plan it.
Okay. Yeah, and you had sent the group earlier that our friend Steve Krakow did a write-up on Jim Cuomo at one point, too. So that's a guy that's on Steve's radar.
Yeah.
Kind of a legendary underground figure.
Yeah, for his Secret History of Chicago. I don't know at what time he did it, but yeah, he had covered Jim Cuomo.
So yeah, Mormos released 2 albums on CBS, and then the band broke up after just a couple of years. Most of the group went back to Chicago and started playing under the name Sky Farmer. Is that the one you were thinking of, Jeremy?
That's the other one that Peter's definitely going to like.
Okay, I didn't get there yet, but I trust you.
Yep. They're a little less avant-garde, I'd say, but a little more folky 60s vibe.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, that Mormos stuff was definitely not afraid to go wherever it felt like going. It was quite, I don't want to say ramshackle, but unhinged might be a good way of saying it. It seemed like they were really pushing the limits, which I appreciate. I'm sure it's not good for everyone, but it's for Peter.
Yeah. Yeah, and Ernie's got some nice high-quality versions of the 2 Mormos albums, plus a live recording up on Bandcamp that are well worth checking out.
All right.
So in 1975, Ernie moved to the San Francisco Bay Area and began working as an arranger and session musician. The initial ideas and concepts for Windsailor began around 1980 when Ernie decided to assemble a group to showcase his flute playing. At this point, he'd been working as a multi-instrumentalist in a variety of genres, but thought that focusing more on the flute might kind of set his music apart. As we said, there's not a ton of flute players out there, so it kind of automatically makes you a little more unique and interesting.
Yeah, I mean, as we pointed out, we have good flute representation on here, having featured like 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
In 300 episodes.
Yeah, and I asked Ernie, like, who were some of his influences and, like, what was the sound he was going for around this time, and he said that there was definitely a Windham Hill influence happening on Windsailor, as I saw there was a few reviews from around the time of people making that comparison, which was
Windham Hill, of course, being a label.
Yes, Windham Hill being, like, arguably the most famous New Age label of the time. Yeah, this comparison was pretty obvious to a lot of people because Windham Hill also started in the Bay Area just a few years before that point. I believe 1976 was when it launched. And Ernie said that he was friends with many of the people associated with the label. And he was also very influenced by players like Paul Horn and Paul Winter and his group Oregon, both of whom we have talked about before.
Yeah, definitely picked up some Paul Winter listening to this with... yeah, some more like driving aspects mixed with the new age stuff, but all like arranged in a way that feel like from the mind of someone who's thought about and analyzed classical composition.
Yes.
Like there's more interaction between the parts than you typically see with like rock music or something.
Yeah. Well, even when you get into the more improvisational jazz area, these feel, and maybe I'm wrong, but they feel more structured.
Yeah, there's definitely not a looseness to this. It's not just a free-form jazz session. Like, you can really tell a lot of thought went into this whole album.
Yeah, and I'm glad Jeremy pointed that out, because that's sort of what I was getting at with comparing it to Frank Zappa's jazz or classical. I feel a classical influence here.
Well, as we said, that was some of his big early influences, getting those free viewings of all the classical music in Chicago. So yeah, it lived on to this album for sure.
It made an impression.
Yep. All right, let's go ahead and listen to another track before we finish off the bio here.
What do you got?
Flipping it over to side B, we're going to hear the song Color Book. Side B, track 1.
Yeah, this one almost sounds like it starts out like it could be a Jim Croce song in the title even.
Love those synthesizer bird sounds on that track. They're very convincing.
Okay, so those were synthesized, not a field recording of birds.
As far as I know, yeah. I mean, the one review had mentioned it was synthesized bird sounds, and there's a synthesizer credit on here, but no field recording credit. So I think those are synthesized.
How is that not your first question for Ernie?
Yeah.
Sean makes a connection, then we're just like, why didn't you go really deep and obscure with your questions? I feel like that happened when we had the opportunity to ask questions of Acid Mother's Temple through someone that was doing an interview with them when they were playing in Kalamazoo. And they were so confused by the obscure questions you threw via someone else at them, Sean.
Yeah. I feel like I embarrassed the interview, like, without even being present.
Way to go.
Yeah, doing my part. The other thing I love about that track, though, is, and something that happens throughout the album, is you kind of, it'll start one way, you're like, okay, I guess I know where this track is going, what kind of genre they're going for, and then it'll make these weird twists and changes of genre that somehow still feel completely natural. Like that one starts and, you know, it's like, okay, this is kind of a folk track, I get it, the acoustic guitar, and then before you know it, it's a smooth jazz song, but it all works.
Yeah, I had that impression when I first listened to this. I was like, oh great, Sean's making me listen to some smooth jazz. But then it kept shifting in this way that was like, oh, this is a lot of different things. That's just like a sound. And I think we kind of touched on this on previous episodes, but this sort of time before fully commercialized smooth jazz, where it's sort of wilder and woollier and has some kind of interesting stuff going on. And I don't, like, maybe that's where you put this. I don't know where you put this.
Yeah, I mean, this would be after, 83 is after what a lot of smooth jazz, the early smooth jazz, that, as we would define it in the 70s.
Huh. So he's just following his own muse, I suppose, then.
Yeah, it's very easy to forget that this came out in 1983 because, yeah, it doesn't really feel like what was happening in music at that point. I mean, like, some elements, yeah, sure, but, like, some of it sounds more 70s, some of it sounds just completely kind of outside of a specific time zone. And, yeah, that's what makes it great, I think.
It's a cool find.
I agree. All right, let's jump back into the story. Around 1982, Ernie Mansfield had saved up enough money from his session work to self-produce his own album. Got in the studio with his band, recorded Windsailor at Starlight Sound in Richmond, California. He then sent the recordings to Fred Catero, who had recently started his own label, Catero Records. Fred remixed the album and released it in 1983, as we said. A little bit about
He remixed
Fred.
it.
A slight remix. I don't think he did a ton of changes. He just kind of tweaked it a little bit here and there.
Okay. I was wondering if that's when maybe the vocals got taken out.
Maybe. I don't know that answer still.
I can't let it go.
A little bit about Fred, as it's important. He was a recording engineer with a very impressive resume of albums he's worked on. He's the engineer on Santana's Abraxas, Linda Ronstadt's Silk Purse, Herbie Hancock's Headhunters, and 2 albums we've covered before, Mongo Santa Maria's Stone Soul and Chicago's Chicago Transit Authority.
Okay. Yeah, that name seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it.
Yeah, he also worked with Chambers Brothers and a bunch of other people. Pretty major figure in the recording industry at that time. So Fred used some of the royalties he'd earned from some of these huge albums that he'd worked on and launched his own label with a focus on non-commercial music. His motto was, if it's commercial, it's probably on the charts. If it's good, it's probably on Catero Records.
I love it.
Yeah. And I think that really speaks to like what we've been saying with how this album has its own vibe to it. It doesn't sound like it's going for anything because that was both the intention of the creator and also, you know, the person that owned the label that was repping this album. Like it was all they wanted that stamp of unique personal touch to it.
Hence why it does not really sound of its time or as if it's following any particular trend.
Right. So Windsailor was actually pretty early on in the short run of Katero Records. I think they did about 25 albums all told, and this is the third release on the label.
Are there any other noteworthy artists, if you have a list available, that released music on Katero that we might be familiar with?
I do have 2 artists that are recommended. There's not a lot on there that's like huge name artists. There's a handful of people that like went on to do a lot of work within New Age or within jazz, but I would say like the average person going through the list probably wouldn't see anything that jumps out to them. But there's a lot of great work on the label, and yeah, I'll be recommending 2 other Katero Records releases at the end of the episode.
Oh, good. I was checking to see if you had remembered to do the recommended similar.
I remember, don't worry.
Wow, he forgets once in 300 episodes, Peter.
Another thing I can't let go.
Yeah.
Another thing you can't let go.
Real quick, let me read off the players that are on this album. On piano and synthesizer, you got Marty Allen, Bob Boss on guitars, Alex Baum on bass, Glenn Cronkite on drums, percussion, and waterphone. Glenn, of those guys, seems to have done the most work outside of this. He also did some recording with Bernie Krause of Beaver and Krause, and also did some recording with Stephen Halpern.
Both artists previously discussed on the program.
Yes. And then on 2 of the tracks, both of which will be featuring, you have Doug Harmon on cello. I do love the cello work on Paris Has Me, the second song we listened to. Once it comes in, it just really takes a song that I already loved and elevates it.
Yeah, I didn't immediately see a list of the players when I was looking into this online, so I was wondering who was on it, if there were any players whose names I recognized. And for a second, I thought that Cronkite name sounded familiar, and then I realized it's probably because of Walter Cronkite. But maybe I've seen that name on something or other.
It's possible. I do have a Glenn Cronkite project that I'll be recommending alongside the 2 Katero releases, so stick around for that.
All right, I am here for it.
Nice.
Hopefully our listeners are too.
Ernie also released one more album on Katero Records in 1985 called Color Drops. That one has a little bit more of a kind of Latin jazz, bossa nova type feel to it. A really good album as well.
And probably similar availability, meaning there aren't many copies, but you could probably get one for cheap.
Absolutely.
If you do find it.
Honestly, from what I saw, you could say that about just about everything on Katero Records, and there's a lot of good material to dig into.
Yeah, for now.
Yep, for now.
Get them while they're cheap.
All right, so now let's go ahead and reveal where Jeremy and I were getting our intros from. Ernie was awarded a platinum record for his work on the 1982 song Percy the Puny Poinsettia, which was, of course, the B-side to Elmo and Patsy's hit Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer.
What? Wow. Yeah, I missed that detail, apparently.
Yeah.
And I got really into Mormos and kind of got stuck
Little
there.
sidetrack. You didn't skip from Mormos to Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer.
No, I didn't really see that one coming. I got ran over by that information.
Right. I was hoping it would be a surprise to someone. That's a funny little footnote in the Ernie Mansfield story. Apparently that was just, another day of session work for him, but got a platinum record out of it.
That one sprung out to me because my dad had that CD and we played it to death as kids because, when you're 6, you think that's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
So it was relevant to you, Jeremy.
Highly relevant.
Well, I didn't see that coming, so genuine shock.
Maybe I'll feature Percy the Puny Poinsettia on our Christmas episode coming up. I actually kind of like that song still.
Better start planning. It's only like 8 months away.
All right.
So yeah, Ernie continues to perform and record to this day. You can hear more of his music, later albums, and also the Mormos albums that we mentioned at windsailormusic.bandcamp.com. Ernie also offers music lessons. You can get more info on that at mansfieldmusic.com.
Yeah, I read he was very into music education and like helped make notation software and fonts and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's done quite a bit of work. I mean, most of the bio was really just getting us up to this album, but you could have a whole nother episode on what he's been up to since then.
Yeah, apparently the Petaluma font that is out there now was based on a font that he made for like the real jazz books that they, if you're a jazz student, you probably know what that is. That gives you like a bunch of jazz standards and how to play them.
It's the opposite of a fake book, right?
Correct.
I remember being very confused by the whole fake book thing. And now I probably have to explain that. No, we'll just leave it out there.
Okay.
You know what? Do you
can
know
look it up.
Do you know what it means?
I think it's just like the quick and dirty way to play it. Like it's not going to spell out every little thing.
Yeah.
It just gives you the basic chords and like, here's the melody too. And you can just kind of riff on it from there.
Starting point. And probably not properly authorized or something.
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
Well, Sean, now that we're talking about fake books and don't even fully understand them, we should probably head towards the end of this episode, which includes you giving your recommended similar albums.
Yes, the much hyped recommended if you like section. First up, the album that, from what I could tell, is maybe the best-selling album on Katero Records, or at least has the most reprints. Paul Spear and his debut album Collection 983 Spectral Voyages from 1984. This is actually an album that I picked up I think about a year ago in my digging for new age adjacent music for the Deep Zones radio show. Spectral Voyages is kind of a guitar and synth driven album with some really cool spacey textures to it. That was the 5th album released on Katero Records, and Paul Spear went on to record some best-selling New Age albums for the Narada Equinox label.
Wonder what it is about the name Paul.
Just a bunch of chill dudes named Paul, you know?
Paul, y'all.
All right, and another Katero Records release that I think Peter, at the very least, would really enjoy. This is an album called So Near, So Far by Aircraft. Came out in 1985. It's a really cool album that also, in a similar way, kind of defies easy categorization. There's elements of new age, jazz, prog, folk, pop, a little bit of everything mixed in there.
So is it coded in my language because it's all over the place and bizarre?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's a little bizarre.
I like it. Aircraft.
Yeah, another one with really cool artwork that if you were just flipping through the bins, I'm sure you would pause and be like, what is this, at the very least?
All right. After I properly absorb Mormos, and what was the one after that? Sky Farmer?
Sky Farmer.
Yeah, Mormos, Sky Farmer, then Aircraft.
Then Aircraft, yep.
We'll talk to you in like 3 months now, Peter.
Yeah, it's a lot to dive into.
All right, third and final recommendation. This is a quartet album that is, there's no band name, it's just the 4 artist names. So this is Art Landy, Mark Isham, Bill Douglas, and Glenn Cronkite. They did an album in 1976 called Rubisa Patrol on the ECM label, a label famous for their contemporary jazz fusion sound.
That was our Cronkite guy.
Yeah, this was a big album that he was on, and like I said, that came out in 76, so that was kind of his calling card album before being on this one. Some of the reviews of this album mentioned that they were already fans of Glenn Cronkite's work with Art Landy. So that's an album with some really wonderful, moody pieces, also kind of very textural, but definitely more in the straight-up jazz world. Also has some excellent flute work by bassist Bill Douglas. And yeah, percussionist Glenn Cronkite. You can hear him on Windsailor and Rubisa Patrol.
All right. Well, thank you, Sean. Seems like some interesting things to dive into.
Yeah, everyone's got their homework now.
And of course, before we head out of here, we want to remind our listeners that we do have a Patreon over at patreon.com/I'd Buy That Podcast, where you can support the podcast, help us keep the lights on here and run things and get some cool bonus content in return. We now have over 60 bonus episodes available on there on various 45s for the most part.
And at least 50 of them are good.
Yeah. Pretty good ratio. So yeah, head on over to patreon.com/I'd Buy That Podcast. We appreciate your support and thank you for listening. What do we have left to say, Sean?
We're going to go out on the last track on the album, side B, track 3, Oh Miranda. There's an exclamation point at the end of that. This one starts with some really cool percussion work, some kind of more abstract, and then goes a few different places. The album is bookended with the longest tracks. I think the opening one is a little over 9 minutes, and this one's a little over 8 minutes. So when you find the album, you can really stretch out and see where they really go with these tracks. You're only hearing the 2-minute clips on this episode.
I thought about that it's hard to represent the music on this in 2-minute clips. You don't get much of the picture. You get an idea, but not the full story for sure. And yeah, I really do like the percussion in the opening of Oh Miranda. Really grabbed my attention.
Oh yeah, and the last thing I'll say for people who are thinking about picking up this album, the pressing quality is excellent. They specifically got this pressed in West Germany at a company called Teldec so that they could have genuine audiophile quality to the music here, and it shows when you're listening to the vinyl copy.
Ooh, I look forward to mine arriving in the mail, the copy that's been played one time after being unsealed.
Yeah, you might have like a little hype card from Katero Records in yours. Mine didn't have it, but I'm told that some of the copies did.
Ooh, I'll look for it, let you know.
I better buy up the last 10 copies out there and corner the market.
Mm-hmm.
Retirement investment.
Speaking of 10, just imagine I make 10 more Jane Mansfield references right now to hit my quota.
Okay, and good.
Yeah. On that note, thank you for listening to I'd Buy That for $1. I'm co-host Peter Cook.
I'm co-host Jeremy.
And I'm co-host Sean Hartman.
Oh, Miranda.
I wonder if Miranda knows about Jennifer.
Oh, that's a good question. To be continued.
Yeah, so many questions unasked.
Goodbye.